This program, of course, is presented by Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the most widely read, widely sold, and respected wrestling magazine in the world today.
This is the Pro Wrestling Illustrated podcast. I'm your host, PWI senior writer Al Castle, back once again. Joining me this week, my old friend, PWI contributing writer Mike Bessler. How's it going, Mike?
Great, Al. It must be sweeps week in the podcast world that you're having me back on.
It is. It's even bigger than that. It's WrestleMania season. Do you know what today is the anniversary of as we recorded this? 36 years ago today?
Remind me.
My shirt is the giveaway. The Ultimate Challenge, the Ultimate Warrior winning the world title at WrestleMania 6. I've got so much one of my prized possessions, a signed cover by the Warrior.
What's the anniversary? 36 years?
36 years, yeah.
30,
it's April 1st, 1990.
In the social media age, we count every single anniversary. 42 years ago, this record.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a big one, but it is a one. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I remember, and I've been the magazine long enough that this is a while ago now, the 35th anniversary of PWI. And I remember, I think we even had a cover with like a 35 and thinking like, that's not really a thing. 35. 40 was a thing. And now I guess we're certainly closing in on, we're past 45. We're closing in on 50 now. Yeah. It's going to be wild. Yeah. How long have you got now at the magazine?
Over 15 years. Yeah. I think I started maybe in 2009 or 2010 with an article about a guy named Ray Alexander. It was the not one to watch. You remember introducing 2 pages? So it's in one of the sister magazines, maybe Inside Wrestling or The Wrestler. I think it was in The Wrestler. Yeah. And, it's funny. I still see Ray here and there on Facebook. I don't know how much he wrestles these days. But I even, in kind of looking over the subjects we were going to talk about tonight, I was thinking about a conversation with him from that very first interview, too. It's there's so many things, when you get to this point that, and you've written far more than I have. I mean, you've got great stories. You've got great points of reference. You and I were talking beforehand how you can pull that stuff out at a gathering or a party or with somebody you just met, and you can riff for hours on the great wrestling stories.
Yeah. Who did you do those a lot? Like the introducings back in the day?
I did. I did those for a while, but then it kind of turned into when I started taking. Started doing the section that I've done for the longest, which, if you remember correctly, it's called Before the Bell.
Before we recorded, I was talking about it, and I called it Below the Belt, which is for our sister adult publication.
That was in the old apartment wrestling magazine. Yeah, we don't talk about. Gosh, that's a great name for a column, though. Somebody else has probably used that.
Yeah, that's probably what I'm thinking. Yeah, but I was going to ask with the introducing stuff, and I'm sure they had their accomplishments. But anybody become like a real big star from those folks?
Well, what I was going to say is, when I started doing Before the Bell, I ended up doing One to Watch, which when I started doing it back then, it was maybe half a page, and it ended up we had some great stories that we were developing. So. And when the sister magazines went away, Before the Bell, you've got me doing it now. I have to very Before the Bell became a one-pager. And some of the people who I have written on that I'm really proud of, Joe Janela, I did One to Watch on him, and MJF, I did his One to Watch. And it's funny, both of those guys. I'll give a shout out to my really good friend Shaheen. He was a huge GCW fan at the time, and he was just like, you got to check these guys out. And they were so great to work with and so great to talk to. I think I did. I think I covered Thunder Rosa
Oh, that's really
also,
good. Yeah.
and probably a couple others. Here's something funny. I was the first person for PWI to cover Jordan Grace in Independent Roundup because I had gotten a tip about her. She was 17 at the time. In that first article, though, somehow it's probably my fault. It couldn't have been Stu's fault. Her age was wrong in the caption, and I think it had her as 24 or something like that. And she kind of gave me a hard time about it a little bit. It was like, really? I'm getting all these people like calling me up saying, well, how old are you again?
Those are a lot of fun stories. Yeah, I remember interviewing Johnny Gargano years ago after he came to WWE and already accomplished a lot of stardom. And the first time that I think we included him in the PWI 500, we ran the wrong picture. We ran a picture of Dakota Darsow with Johnny Gargano's name. And I remember talking about him. So some of those stories are fun to revisit. They probably weren't fun at the time for these guys.
Yeah.
But,
I covered Megan Bain in One to Watch too. That's a fairly recent one too, and she's kind of blown up.
Yeah. That's the cool thing about doing this stuff is you stick around long enough and you see that. Yeah, I remember when we were putting together the 500 years ago, and I've got a friend who trained at the local wrestling school out here, and I think Stu was asking us, find out who are some like of your local independent stars that we might want to consider. And I remember asking her, anybody you'd recommend, from Long Island that should be on our radar. And she said, there's this guy, Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Yeah, that like you should definitely check out. And there you go. So
he was in the One to Watch. He was so respectful and so
really wow. He hadn't found himself yet.
Well, I mean, he had, but he, I don't think he would mind me saying this. Like, he basically talked to me about how he's really been kind of cultivating this, and you talk. Sometimes I think it's okay to pull the curtain back a little bit. It's been wide open for a long time. I mean, some guys in the indies who are just kind of finding themselves and stuff like that, you might even get once in a while, well, you can kayfabe it, or I trust you, or I can't think about it right now, or I can't think of anything. But he was like, this is very specific. This is what I want. This is the quote that I want to use, and so forth. And just deadly serious about where he wanted to go, and you got to respect that.
Yeah. I mean, he's a guy. You talk about pulling back the curtain, and he's a guy who doesn't like to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't, not to give anything away, but he's potentially going to factor into something we've got coming up. So I got to talk to him some weeks ago, and at the time, because I've interviewed him before, we're both Long Island guys. And to be honest with you, sometimes it's a bit much because he, frankly, he's always in character, but it's not accidental, right? I mean, he's a guy who has this vision for what he wants to do, and he doesn't budge from it. And I actually respect that a lot. And taking it back to the Ultimate Warrior, I know like the Warrior gets a lot of hate in wrestling. I understand why. I'm the last person, who would call him a good wrestler or even a good human being. But the one thing that I always really respected about the Warrior, and I do think it's what made him special and great, is that same thing. He had this vision for what the Ultimate Warrior was, and knew it in a way that nobody else did. So I think that sort of protected the character and kept it authentic. And I think MJF does that. It doesn't work for everybody. And sometimes when I've tried to have these conversations with him where you try to be a little serious about something and he just uses it as an opportunity to just kind of take a shot at someone or call you stupid or something like that, sometimes it's like a bit much. But I get what he's doing, and I certainly appreciate it.
Can you imagine watching wrestling from the 80s? And I know every time I come on here, I talk about Memphis wrestling and Pafo's ICW, which I will touch on again later on. But if you ever watch the old Memphis clips too, the promos that the guys would do and how they were just so abusive to Lance Russell. And he was such a pro and could take it so well, even being grabbed and tossed around sometimes. And he played into that so well too. He was just as serious as they were. I don't think I could do that. I don't, if I'm interviewing somebody or something like that, I'm usually, pretty serious, pretty respectful myself. We kind of look for common ground. I think it takes something special to get in it and stay in it for a long time.
Where you see that, or you see people not doing that well, is when they get like celebrity involvement, and it's why I have so much respect for like the Bad Bunnies of the world who take it super seriously. That like versus Jay Leno or Jon Stewart.
That's the old Mr. T story too, about how he wanted to. What was it? He wanted to kind of decimate. He wanted to call the shot his shots in that Mania match.
But it's not just that
way.
Yeah, it's not just that. It's also like taking it seriously versus like exuding, I'm kind of too cool for this, and this is all kind of a joke. Yeah. That was very much like the Jay Leno kind of flavor when he got involved. It's
Kevin
like,
Federline, I think, was the same kind of thing.
I thought Kevin Federline, you're really digging up the name from the past. I thought in the celebrity involvement sort of like hierarchy, I'd have, I guess the latest one that you could evaluate is Jelly Roll, clearly taking it super seriously, right? I mean, I'm not a huge fan, but like
it's hard for me. Yeah,
it's not. There are these guys who do it with like a nudge and a wink. Like I get that this is all just kind of a goof, and we're just having fun here. Drew Carey, terrible. Right. I mean, to me, like that's the worst of it. Right.
If you're gonna do this, Al, though, you have to do it right. And I need to know your thoughts on David Arquette.
David Arquette, I came to really well, for one thing, years later, I got to interview him, I think, for the podcast, and he ended up like really taking wrestling very, very seriously. I think the angle, whatever it was now, 25 years ago. He got a lot of a bad rap. I think he was just kind of along for the ride. I think even at the time he had an appreciation and a respect for wrestling. So I don't really put that whole thing on him. And again, when I got to talk to him years later, he's a guy who really gets wrestling and I think wanted to rehabilitate his reputation in wrestling. So, but it sucked. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't good.
Well, the documentary, first of all, if you're talking about the rehabilitation, the documentary was excellent. I reviewed that for the magazine as one of our media reviews. I go back and watch the WCW stuff from time to time. He was in the Triple Cage match, right?
Right. Yeah.
I think that Triple Cage match, I mean, to me, is it on the same level as, some of my favorite matches, like, you remember the HBK Cena rubber match from, I think, Mania 23, the hour-long match. I mean, that's one of my favorite matches. Yeah. Is that the same kind of thing? No. Is it entertaining? I thought it was really entertaining, and now I'm a little biased because, once again, let's count the number of references. Grew up in the Memphis territory. We had Andy Kaufman, and we had that during my lifetime. And people have made that comparison before, but for me, this was just. It was a continuation of that, so I was fine with it. So I feel like that was kind of star power done acceptably, but I think some of the other ones that you're bringing up, Drew Carey, K-Fed, there's probably some other ones in there. Even the WWE, what did they call it? Guest. What was that era where they had a guest?
The guest host, like Bob Barker and
they
Betty
had a
White
specific name for it. But
general manager, it was the guest general manager,
and that was those were pretty bad.
I mean, again, the high end, you had like a Bob Barker, who everybody remembers really fondly. There were loads that are so forgettable that I'll see clips of them, and I have no memory of this happened. I can't think of one right now, but I remember
ZZ Top, maybe. You remember when ZZ
Top
was
one? Yeah. Yeah, I remember
It's
seeing
nothing against
recently.
Easy Top. It's just like, I don't know. Like,
Those are bad times, man.
Yeah.
Anyhow, this is what's always fun having you on, Mike, because we are so off the rails, and I haven't even addressed why Brian is in here.
I'm really good at that. I'm really good at taking things in a totally different direction.
Yes. So very quickly, Brian Solomon, my usual co-host, tied up, may be joining us in a little bit. As I mentioned, it's WrestleMania season, and one of the things that we're going to be doing here is talking about WrestleMania. I expect I'll be able to get another podcast in before the show, so this won't quite be a preview, but it might end up kind of a preview. But basically, I want to talk about a lot of what seem to be real issues with the build to this year's WrestleMania, which I don't think is too much to say. One of the more, at least in my opinion, and your mileage will vary, one of the more underwhelming cards and builds to a card in a long time. I don't know if it's too much to say ever, but it's in the mix. And we'll get to that and talk to about some other stuff too. A lot to cover. Real quick, the latest issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. It's got CM Punk on the cover. He's going to be in the main event of WrestleMania, defending his World Heavyweight Championship against Roman Reigns. Lots in here. It is our annual spotlight on Japan issue, so lots of coverage about Japanese wrestling in here. So much more. Your before the bell. What are you looking at this month?
This month I'm just getting started. So you've got it
in this issue.
Better you than me.
Yeah.
I don't have I think I took my copy to my 9 to 5 job.
Let me find.
It's in the front, Al.
Yeah. Of course, big shot. You get like the first few pages of the magazine.
Can I say while you're looking that up, if just in case Brian doesn't join us tonight, I'm pretty sure I saw one of his books, at least one of his books, on Spotify as an audiobook the other day by accident. Mm-hmm. It might be the Gorilla Monsoon book, and if I'm not mistaken, is Brian reading that book? Have you?
He is, yeah. He's talked about it here all the time. Yeah, that was a little bit up in the air, I think, when he wrote it, whether he'd get an opportunity to read it or not, and he did. Yes,
how cool is that? I mean, that's got to be a surreal kind of a pinch me moment.
Yeah, as if the guy doesn't have enough to do. To read a whole book. I always kind of give him a hard time. I mean, he's like the hardest working man in wrestling. You got a book by Alistair Glenn Miller that you reviewed.
Oh yeah, Rough House, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
Really interesting book. I heard from her after she read the review. She was kind of over the moon with it, and yeah, interesting stuff. It's about rural family, a young man's pretty obsessed, pretty much in the grip of pro wrestling, and he's going to make that his life.
Do you like doing the media review stuff? I imagine it puts a kind of workload on you that none of us have, is that at any given time you've got a book to read, a movie to watch, what have you, and I imagine the quality, and you're such a nice guy, it's rare that you're going to destroy something, but I imagine there's a range of quality in some of these things you have to consume.
It's not fun to call somebody else's baby ugly. Yeah. I think I've only given maybe 2 1-star reviews in all the years that I've been doing it.
Now I got to know what those were.
Oh boy, should I bring them up again? I think, and I can't remember if it was a 1-star, but and it's such, you give me a chance to kind of resurrect myself here on that one. But the Vince McMahon biography that came out a few years ago, that was really, it was before the lawsuit.
Oh, well, you certainly weren't alone in that.
Yeah.
Everybody tore that one apart. Yeah.
I felt like, and I want to liken this is a really obscure reference, so bear with me, and I shared this with Kevin at the time. There had been a biography of China's Mao Zedong that had come out, and I remember reading it, and the biography was panned in one of the major, it might have been like NYT review books or something like that. And they said, it's not a good look, as a biographer, when you turn somebody into basically a 2-dimensional paper cutout of Satan or something like that. And that's kind of what I felt like the book was. I mean, because that internet axiom of the longer a discussion goes, the more likely you're going to compare someone to Hitler. I think that happened somewhere in the book also, and it just not that a lot of those things weren't true. It just there was something about the book that just didn't work for me. I felt like it was very problematic. You know,
Yeah, again,
and I don't know if I read it today, knowing what I know now. I'm not sure that I would rank it much differently.
Yeah, I never read it, but I remember reading a lot of reviews on it, and certainly you weren't alone in your criticism of it. Anyhow, pick up the latest issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and I recently got a sneak peek at the one that we are just putting to bed now. Maybe by the time you're hearing this, it's out. And another fun one, obviously WrestleMania coming up. We're going to have our WrestleMania coverage, and before you know it, we're going to be talking PWI 500 again. So the thing to do is subscribe. That's how you'll get the best value for your money. You don't have to worry about missing an issue. You could subscribe to the digital edition, the print edition. There are bundles where you could get both. You could get back issues, everything over at pwi-online.com. So, Mike, let's talk a little WrestleMania, and I set it up there a little bit beforehand. But I'll just say it. I'm not feeling this WrestleMania at all, and it isn't. I heard Dave Meltzer talking about the card, and he talked about how there's some of these matches are going to be really good, great, and the potential is there for good matches. And I don't think that's the issue. I don't doubt that these men and women will bring their A game and will execute and give us the best version of any matches. But I think with wrestling in general and WrestleMania in particular, it really, so much of the story on a WrestleMania and how it will be remembered is written before the show even goes on TV, right? I mean, you think about, they're inducting Andre and Hulk into the Hall of Fame this year, and you think about, again, like that WrestleMania 3 was the biggest show before, they opened the curtain that night. And to that end, I think that's my real beef with this card is that it feels thrown together. I know a lot of that is circumstantial, and they were, there's some irony in Danhausen cursing everybody, because this feels like a cursed WrestleMania in that so many injuries plaguing this card, and it's really thrown them for a loop, and they've gone from a plan A to a plan B to a plan C, and so you give them a pass for a little bit of that, but that's not all of it. I mean, when you look at your biggest star, or certainly one of them, Cody Rhodes, and the fact that it wasn't super clear what he was doing at WrestleMania up until a couple of weeks ago, and when I heard it, I was skeptical that this was even really the match, because it felt so thrown together. And again, that's not a slight on Cody or Randy, and I don't doubt that they'll have a terrific match. But to me, that anticipation isn't there. This isn't something that has been building and building and building. And in fact, the opposite. We just had this prolonged storyline with Cody and Drew, where we were sold on how these guys hate each other, and Cody's breaking into Drew's house, and Drew is setting the picture of Dusty on fire and all this stuff. And then it's like, it's over, and now on to the next thing. And now this is like, the most personal of feuds. And I'm just not buying it. And one thing that WWE has always been really good about WrestleMania is making everything feel special. And that often means holding back on a lot. So you've got something to deliver at WrestleMania and present it as, for the first time ever. And to me, there's so many missed opportunities for that. AJ Lee's a first singles match in 10 years. They did that weeks ago on a Raw or a pay-per-view. The return of the Bellas challenging for the women's tag team title. They've now been wrestling for a few weeks. Even something like Jelly Roll's first singles match. They did that on SmackDown last week. The main event of night one, Randy and Cody, was the opening match at King of the Ring a few months ago. And the main event of night 2, Punk and Roman Reigns, we got a version of it at last year's WrestleMania in the triple threat. So there isn't anything here that to me feels WrestleMania special. And I do think when you're talking WrestleMania, it's a higher standard than any other show. If this was a SummerSlam or what have you, this would be a perfectly acceptable card. For WrestleMania, it really feels like it's missing the mark. What do you think?
I think a couple things, I got a few specific things, but I am going to go, take kind of a bigger picture thing too. But I do want to say on the Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton, that did have my attention. I'm intrigued, and I'd like to see that because of their history. And I think you can tell just by knowing me as you have that I am a fan of the long game, and I am a fan of like callbacks to history and stuff like that. So I would like to see that. Less intrigued about the Punk Reigns match, to tell you the truth. And I think not that he would care what I think, but I've been hot and cold on CM Punk for a few years now. He was an early favorite of mine, and I just find him to be a little exhausting at times. I do like that Drew McIntyre is going to get sounds like a pretty big match with Jacob Fatu. Not sure what to make of the Seth Rollins Gunther.
I think that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. And not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but like,
that's right.
And again, here is a circumstance where clearly injuries factored in, but we get Seth back for weeks now, and every week he's coming out inexplicably with a mask on and takes the mask off. I don't know why. I don't know what discernible reason he's got for doing that, and targeting the Vision every week and targeting Paul Heyman. They're like, all right, they're building something, and the payoff is Gunther.
Yeah.
It feels absolutely and the laziest way to do it. Gunther attacks him, points at the sign. They're wrestling at WrestleMania. That's the extent of your storyline.
All you need to know.
I mean, now, and we've got a few weeks to build it, but I mean, to me, that is about as lazy as it gets in putting a match together.
I hate to go down this road, and I'm honestly not playing devil's advocate, but I do feel like at some level that we've been at this spot a few weeks before WrestleMania for many years where we're asking this question: is this the weakest build that we've ever seen? It does feel like Groundhog Day. And it's not that you shouldn't be asking the question. It's that how do we keep finding ourselves back here? Is it us? Is it them? I pulled up while you were talking because it kind of dovetails with what we were talking about before. Something that I panned fairly recently, and it was WWE Unreal. Did you watch any of the WWE Unreal on Netflix?
Oh, absolutely. I've talked about it a lot here. I'd very much be interested in your thoughts on. You're another old school traditionalist, so
it's not that I don't like seeing behind the scenes stuff, but I kind of asked the question, do we know too much at this point? And I think one of the most objectionable things, I'm actually looking back to at the piece that I wrote for this. I think this was the one. Yeah, this is it. Where Cody Rhodes introduces himself by saying, "My role in WWE is that I'm currently the undisputed WWE champion." Awful. I mean, I get what they're trying to do, but it's WWE is continuing to. There's nothing wrong with trying to evolve, but it feels like every time they take these big steps like this, it's like they're trying to disavow what came before. That's why there's so much backlash against certain things that certain Vince era things, like you don't call the moves in a match. You don't call it a belt. You don't do the. This is the same thing, but on a much grander scale. And with the idea that WWE has become so big, it's this new thing that's kind of hard to define, hard to quantify. And this is what I'm coming back to. I'm not taking us off into a different direction again. What I'm coming back to is I feel like WWE as an entity feels like they are too big to fail, and feels now more than ever that we're going to put the product out there. People are going to consume it, and we're going to continue to make a whole lot of money. And if that ever changes, the people who are making, it's kind of like regular everyday life, the people who are making the most money at the top, they won't be affected by a big failure because maybe they will have moved on or cashed out or something like that. But it's not beyond the realm of possibility that WWE could really see some serious consequences as an entity, as part of a genre, if they don't correct at some point. And I'm going to ask you now, I mean, am I being too lofty in this assessment?
No, I think you're really hitting on something that I think is very much part of the story of the build to WrestleMania right now, and that is that this is a real problem for WWE, and one that what do they call it? A lagging indicator. I think it's going to be a while before you really kind of see the results of it. Is and I don't know how you measure this, but I think WWE is starting to really build some bad will with fans after a lot of years of really goodwill. And I mean, I've been very much a WWE defender as far as the product over the last several years. And when I meet lapsed fans or non-fans, I say all the time, or up until recently, you should really check out WWE. This is some of the best wrestling, some of the best storytelling I've ever seen. I've been watching wrestling for 40 plus years. That's not the case anymore.
When did you say that last? When was the last time you said
I mean, certainly up until WrestleMania 40, Cody finishing his story, and even a little bit past that. But I think WWE was the product was still very, very strong and at the peak right through 2024. And then, as we've talked about here, all boom periods come to an end, and then there's, you know, some of it is cyclical and what have you. But I think there's been a clear drop off in the quality of WWE, and that's part of the story. The other part of the story is, again, this bad will, and a lot of that is the TKO takeover, the ticket prices, just a feeling that they're taking advantage of fans a lot. I mean, you see some of these absurd promotions, $10,000 to see to ride in Cody's bus, and it's just insane. You know that my buddy was texting me earlier today, because we go to wrestling all the time here in New York, and they just advertised Saturday Night's Main Event coming to Madison Square Garden, kind of thing that I wouldn't think about missing years ago. And the cheapest tickets they could get in are $200 for the nosebleeds, and that's down from where they were a few months ago. And I mean, the WrestleMania ticket prices have been absolutely insane. And so there's a feeling that you've got your hands kind of deeper in fans' pockets at the same time that you're taking your eye off the ball quality wise, and it just creates a recipe for this feeling, again, bad will, and you're not living up to your end of the deal, kind of thing.
It's a great. I have so many. I have questions that I want to ask you based on what you just said, but I do want to say this is a great time to talk about not this WrestleMania, but next year's WrestleMania.
I think it's a huge part of it,
which is in Saudi Arabia, and I'm the backlash, the instant, and we'll call it at this stage preliminary backlash, is significant. And not to say that Nick Khan is an expert in geopolitical affairs, but this idea, first of all, saying close to 2 years out, I'm confident that WWE fans will travel to Riyadh for WrestleMania. That's a fantasy. I don't even know why somebody would say something like that out loud. Are we seeing some exorbitant ticket prices along with these ridiculous kind of meet and greet? You mentioned the Cody Rhodes bus thing. It kind of reminds me of the Kiss End of the Road tour, where they had these insane prices for the meet and greets at the end, and you could pay thousands for a busted guitar and stuff. And I say as a lifelong wrestling fan, lifelong Kiss fan. That's crazy. Like, and I can't believe we're living there right now. When after the Nick Khan comment, I kind of roasted him a little bit in the talking trash section that I do, also in Before the Bell, and my comeback to that was that Khan conceded that everyday folks may need to make adjustments in spending to make the trip, like switching from imported to domestic caviar. That's kind of where your head is, because where we're at too right now, Al, whether we're in a recession or not, or headed for one, think about what people say even these days about football as a family sport. A lot of a family afford a football game, assuming that they're paying market price for the tickets. That's going to be a pretty big chunk of change too. So it's not just wrestling, but I think WWE has become consciously ridiculous. If I can, they're aware that it's excessive. Yeah. But what are you going to do?
Well, I think this kind of dovetails into a conversation we've had some here on the podcast, and every time I say not to get political, we always end up political. But there's been some discussion, and this has come up with Mick Foley some weeks ago, and just even some with Brody Lee in AEW. And the anti-ice chants, and that's just that this thought that WWE, I guess the plainest way to say it is sort of like the MAGA wrestling company, and I sort of defended WWE in saying, like, I think that might be a little unfair in some ways, but they're not doing themselves any favors when, as you're touching on, in at a time where there's some real economic hardships in this country. Yeah, you're charging $10,000 for a buster. Now, you certainly don't have to pay the $10,000. You don't have to get on the bus, but there's something really off-putting when it's almost worse when you charge these ridiculous prices and the building is full, right? And that's what I'm always thinking when I'm watching. Raw was in my neck of the woods, Madison Square Garden, 2 nights ago. Again, once upon a time, I would have never missed Raw in Madison Square Garden. Now I didn't even look at ticket prices because I knew it'd be so absurd that I wouldn't bother. And when I see that it's packed and everybody's at ringside, it almost creates a resentment toward these people, right? Like, who's got this money? Who's dropping, I don't know, $5,000 for ringside tickets to Raw? It almost makes you, again, resent them, dislike them, and that's a real problem when the common fan and wrestling, frankly, has traditionally catered to middle class families. So when you're making it sort of this or trying to make it this kind of high roller entertainment product, kind of what you'd see at like the big boxing matches over history and UFC in recent years, you're transforming your fans into something that I think people are not going to like. And I got Brian joining us right now. What's up, Brian?
Hey, everybody. Sorry.
That's all right. We're early discussing something that we've talked about here before, and that is kind of the high cost of becoming a WWE fan, and how it is maybe building some real bad will with WWE these days, leading up to WrestleMania.
Without a doubt, it's becoming almost as complicated as being a baseball fan.
Yeah.
I basically just stopped caring about the Yankees because they make it so hard for me to follow them, which says a lot. But it's like the company now has turned heel. And
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
You never had this happen before, where when they mention TKO or they mention Paul Levesque or they mention anything having to do with the company, the fans boo. The live crowd boos. They're angry.
Have you guys ever? Are you guys familiar with the Freakonomics series of the books? I mean, the authors encourage you to think like an economist, in dissecting kind of your atypical questions and social phenomena. You think like an economist towards this, though, because Al, you were talking before Brian came on about the high cost, but also there is some competition, not just from AEW, not just from the usual suspects, but there's other competition in pop culture. That if the product continues to go the route that we're talking about, I don't mean to sound kind of doomsday or like a wrestling insider, but if their product continues to purport to be something that it's not, people will invariably go look for other things because they can't afford this thing anyway. So I can't afford it, I don't like it, so maybe it's time to do something else. And maybe at some point they'll kind of turn this around, but I feel like in an age where people are cashing out and making major sums of money, if that happens again, if we see like another sale or another group or something cash out, it really puts the future of WWE in question. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, and I think kind of to what Brian said, I mean, it puts fans in a position, or certainly some fans, a lot of fans, to kind of root for WWE's failure, right? Because there is all this bad will, like, well, if you're going to start pricing me out of going to shows, then you get that Schadenfreude when you see that ratings are down or they're struggling to sell tickets for WrestleMania. It's like, haha, good for you. And that's not what you want out of fans. And I think that's where you're getting to. Like that the bad will is such that you take some pleasure in seeing them do poorly.
Yeah, and we don't want to be back to that point again, because I know, I mean, a couple decades ago it was TNA and people were rooting for their, and it was there's always these reality checks where A, some people find this entertaining, B, this is the bread on somebody's table. TNA had to make some changes in order to stay alive and to stay relevant. AEW, you see WWE haters kind of saying, oh, AEW can't sell this or that, but they've got their diehard faithful too. We don't want to see, I don't want to see wrestling fail. I think it's great to have the diversity of content that we have now. I'm just concerned as to where it's going with this, and I hope other people don't follow suit and try to do things like the WWE Unreal thing that we talked about, or calling or saying their champion's role is so on and so forth.
Yeah, every kind of new thing that they roll out just puts a worse and worse taste in my mouth. We've talked about this a little bit, Brian, but I was watching a little bit of Cody's podcast with what's his name, Zack Ryder, Matt Cardona. We're not supposed to call him Zack Ryder anymore. And it's all about like the importance. I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but so much of the conversation is about the importance of wearing the nicest suits when you're at the show. And the conversation is about what are you drinking, and then it is sponsored by a vodka company, and they make customized cocktails for every wrestler. I think I told you about when he had Cena on. They were discussing smoking cigars in John Cena's penthouse overlooking Central Park the night before SummerSlam. And I'm just thinking, like, how do you think like this relates to fans? I mean, this is like the most unrelatable thing possible. And, and they just seem to be moving further, again, not to make it political, but to take some parallels in the middle of a war, in the middle of an economic crisis, where gas prices are $4 a gallon and going up. It's a certain somebody bringing up the construction of a ballroom at the White House, right? It's that kind of thing. It's like, how are you not seeing how bad this comes off? And I think there's been a lot of that in WWE, and I kind of a tone deafness,
Yeah, because I think it's the same reason. Both examples is that they do not care. That's the basic explanation, because they're making so much money.
Such a bad thing too.
That it doesn't matter.
Wrestling company.
Yeah, they don't care, and it's very out of touch, and it's very this is not the WWE audience. This is not. I mean, yes, the pro wrestling's audience has changed dramatically over the years. WWE's audience has changed dramatically. Nevertheless, this is still not WWE's audience, and I don't know what they're imagining. This kind of like high-end boutique nonsense. This is not what the people, and I think that's what they're running into. I think one of the reasons that they're running into struggles with the ticket prices, it's partly the product cooling off, but I don't think that's enough, because the product has cooled off, but I don't know if it's to the degree that all of a sudden people are going to stop going. I think part of it is the kind of buyer remorse now. It's been a couple of years like this, and I think people are finally at the point where they're like, okay, I think my credit card has taken enough of a beating. Like, we did this once or twice. I think we got to stop now. I think that's starting to happen, where people are going, I could splurge on this once in a lifetime thing, but it's really just once in a lifetime. And I think it's getting to that point now where people are not, even the people that are willing to spend that, they're not willing to do it forever, you know?
Yeah, and I think that gets to something I was thinking about is, again, Raw was just in Madison Square Garden. I would typically never miss it. This time I didn't even look at ticket prices. And that's one of the things that happens is you get people out of the habit of going to WWE. It becomes this thing that, I guess I just won't go anymore. So even when, and evidence of this is that when they have been running these sales and discounts on WrestleMania tickets in recent weeks because they've struggled to sell them, they haven't been able to move them. So it's gotten to the point where it's not enough just to kind of correct it. Now people are just out, right? They're just like, well, I don't really have to go to WrestleMania, you know, like I guess I could just not go. And when WWE comes to town, now people are out of the habit and they realize, like, maybe it wasn't, to your point, maybe it wasn't the best way to spend my money anyway.
Right. And it's almost like a backfiring kind of thing, because you've also got, now they stopped the house show touring. So you've got all those smaller markets that they just simply don't ever go to anymore, the towns that really only got house shows. And I guess maybe if they thought, oh, that's going to make people want to come even more when it's somewhere near their area. But I think maybe the reaction is just, well, I guess we're just going to stop going to see wrestling now. And you know what I mean? It's like they're literally just euthanizing their audience. I don't know how else to put it. That's what they're doing.
I got two quick follow-up points to this conversation too. One is just kind of as a contrast to the podcast with Cody talking about smoking cigars in his penthouse with Cena. Our good friend, our mutual good friend, Brady Hicks, who's part of the PWI bullpen, Brady's old podcast, In the Room, which I think is still chugging. If you want to talk about relatable content, one of the things he used to close the show with years ago was fatty food of the week. That from the other panel members. Now that is relatable content.
Yeah, there's something in between, I think.
The other thing, though, is, Brian, before you came on, Al and I were talking about my writing time with PWI. We're talking about media reviews, which I do love doing. But the only other book I can remember giving a 1-star review to was called Trump Mania. And it was it was done, I think, right after the election, kind of to cash in, and makes the valid point that, I mean, for a long time, the current president had a relationship with the WWE product, but the book was just subpar and not great, not kind of our typical fare. So yeah, it was an apolitical review. I will say that, but deserving of the 1-star rating. But at the same time, when I said it's kind of hard to rain on somebody's parade, I did acknowledge that it was somebody's work that somebody felt like was very important, and that's part of it. Funny, all these years later, we're still kind of talking about some of the same dynamics, albeit in a different way.
Kind of bringing it back to WrestleMania, all of these issues that we're bringing up that I think are very real issues would be one thing if they were happening when the product was really good, right? I mean, it's easier to demand, a premium dollar for a premium product. But frankly, and it's taken a while for me to come around and say this, I think the product's pretty bad right now, in journalism, there's a 1-2 trend, right? And you had a WrestlePalooza back in September, a really disappointing show, and it kind of like uncharacteristically a bad PLE from WWE, would really for a long time been running great shows, and yeah, you kind of give them a pass. All right, so that one they kind of missed. And then Survivor Series was the same thing, also kind of missed the mark. Then Royal Rumble was a little bit disappointed. Then Elimination Chamber. So this is now 4 PLEs in a row that it's just been kind of at best meh. And TV is got. I mean, SmackDown was my favorite show to watch. The favorite wrestling show to watch. SmackDown's become unwatchable in recent months. I mean, one thing is that it's so long now, right? They went back to this 3-hour format, overloaded with really lame comedy, just to me lazy angles, and WrestleMania is typically where you have your best storytelling. I don't think there is one particularly compelling storyline going into wrestling. Cody and Randy is coming along, and I think they're doing some okay stuff, kind of telling the story about the generational wrestling families and all that stuff, but it feels thrown together, and that's on the one exception of Brock and Obafemi. I think they're doing a really good job. That feels like a WrestleMania match. Almost nothing else does.
I saw people saying that they should make it the main event. I mean, they're not going to do that, but because it seems to be the match that has the most juice on the ball right now of anything. Really.
Do you guys think that the 2 nights factors into it though? Because
sure.
It's like, oh, it's WrestleMania weekend. I'm going to watch WrestleMania, on Sunday. But now it's like, man, I really got to watch 2 nights of wrestling. And you're fans saying that.
Yeah.
When you've got enough for 2 nights, it's one thing. Now it feels like a slog, right? Because they had Penta on Monday night. It's like, so you're defending the Intercontinental title? Like, yes, no opponents yet. And he goes, I'm gonna do it in a ladder match.
Right.
We later on we find out the opponents. Apparently they qualified on in some matches on main event, except that those matches hadn't been taped yet. This is just the most slipshod, just sloppy booking that I can remember in forever.
I think it's just like we talked about last time, how now they're a couple of years into this post-Vince era, and whatever fumes were left over are gone. And I think they're just having a hard time. They're discovering this is actually very hard to do and keep going. And there's a reason back in the day, wrestling promotions, like your booker's lifespan would be about 2, 3, 4 years, and then they were gone. You'd bring somebody else in. It's very hard. There's, like you're saying, they've got a few problems here. Raw and SmackDown, 3 hours a week each. So the PLE means less than ever, even WrestleMania. It's just like, why is this special now? I watch 2 3-hour shows a week, and on those shows, I've got big matches happening between big stars. So, never have the PLEs or pay-per-views, never have they meant less than they do right now.
The answer to your question, though, if I was speaking from WWE or as WWE, and you say, why am I watching this? I'd say, because it's WWE. That's why.
Well, that's what they think.
Yeah.
That's their attitude, and that can only take you so far. It seems like they have so much time to fill that it's gotten so repetitive, to your point, Al, especially because I cover this week to week. So I'm sitting down and I'm recapping these shows, which I would not wish on anybody. It's like a level of Dante's Inferno, but the show, it just becomes run-in after run-in after run-in. Every single match, there's a post-match attack. There's 14 locker room fights in every show. And they all mean nothing when you do it like this. And it seems like their only way of building any kind of angle or interest in a match is, okay, we're going to come out every week and yell at each other in the ring about the same thing. And like they're doing now, don't get me wrong, CM Punk and Roman Reigns is a great match on paper to have as a WrestleMania main event, but it just feels like, okay, I'm going to come out and attack you and lay you out. And then next week, you're going to come out and attack me and lay me out. And then we're going to get in the ring and yell at each other about weird inside baseball stuff that half the crowd won't understand. And I'm going to accuse you of being old, even though we're both in our 40s. It's just not, it's not what you call great storytelling. Wrestling does not have to be Shakespeare, believe me. But you need like the basics of something. And I think that's a big part of the problem. They have so much time to fill that they don't know what the hell to do with all that time.
You remember about 20 years ago? I keep saying everything happened about 20 years ago. That's because I'm in my 50s now. Everything was 20 years ago. When part of the Mania build or part of the build to a big pay-per-view was to take the two main guys who were feuding and put them together as a tag team for a couple weeks.
Sure.
And they coexist.
Yeah.
And Punk actually made fun of that recently, right? Because I think that came up as like, well, is that maybe a route that you take? Do we see you and Roman teaming? And he kind of like crapped on the idea. And when he did, I thought like, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, it's probably would be as good as anything you're gonna do. As compared to what you're talking about, just like every week. Yeah, it's like, all right, we're in the last segment. Punk's going to come out. Roman's going to come out. They're going to jaw at each other,
And you want to talk about the guard, and look, I always get flack for this when I complain about this, but it's like, boy, has the business changed when you're talking about Monday Night Raw, Madison Square Garden, and your main event, quote unquote, is just a 2-minute ringside fight between two guys. They don't even do the dark match anymore, the dark main event after the show goes off the air. Nothing. That's it. They gave them like 4 matches. One of them got thrown out. It was the women's tag match. Didn't even happen. The last match of the night was like Raquel Rodriguez versus Io Sky. Nothing against those two. That's not the last match of the night on Monday Night Raw from WrestleMania. And and the rest of the show is just people yelling at each other and having fights at ringside. And I don't know. Like, I guess, it's a different ball game. I don't know.
This is again where you find yourself kind of rooting against them, and not because you don't want people to make a living or anything like that, but because they need to be sent the message that like you need to deliver better than this, right? And that's why I'm bothered when I see a substandard product and I see ringside full, knowing all those people paid thousands and thousands of dollars. It's going to reinforce what WWE is doing, right? I mean, what's their incentive to provide a better product when people are paying these prices? So that's why, again, I'm happy to see them struggling to sell these tickets for WrestleMania, because, like, either reduce the ticket prices or give us a better product, or both, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm rooting for it because I'm hoping I could eventually afford to go again.
Yeah,
so it's very selfish.
It's insane. Yeah, I mean, for other reasons, but I haven't missed a WrestleMania in person in almost 10 years. Last one I didn't go to, other than the COVID year one, was 2017. And, part of it was ticket prices. Part of it is the fact that they went back to Vegas. And that's part of the story too, right? Just greed, just like, how do we maximize every last penny? And part of it is that I'm just not really feeling the product so much. As far as going through the card, we talked about some of the main matches. Anything else here? I mean, jump out at you guys I mean, you've got Dominic and Finn Balor, presumably. I don't know. They've announced that.
Looks that way, yeah.
Drew and Jacob Fatu in an unsanctioned match. The 2 women's title matches, which are like, they're I don't even know if they're fine. I mean, I think the Rhea Jade stuff, frankly, has been pretty bad. I haven't enjoyed it. I think Liv and Stephanie, the build's been a little bit better, and I expect they'll have a better match. Everything else is just like a 5 tag team.
LA Knight headed towards something with Logan Paul, maybe.
I don't know. Is it going to be? I thought maybe they'll do like a 6-man.
They just put the tag title on Logan Paul and Austin Theory last night. So
my takeaway
Monday night
from Monday is maybe a 6-man with the Usos and LA Knight versus the Vision and Speed. I show Speed in like a celebrity match. None of it does anything for me.
So I'm looking at it now, what they seem to have in place here, and so there's Seth Rollins and Gunther, which has come completely out of left field. It's just like, I'm basically going to come out, attack you, and then point at the WrestleMania sign. And that's it. That's all I need to do.
That's your storyline. Yeah.
You want to talk about lazy? That is about as lazy as it gets.
Again, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. You give him a little bit of a pass because that seemed to be affected by a lot of injuries, and they are just snake bit when you talk about Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed, Bianca Belair, Rey Mysterio, Seth Rollins to some extent. All on either currently injured or up until recently injured. And I know I'm forgetting many more people, but so it's kind of thrown them for a loop where they've had to make a lot of last minute changes. I guess the expectation was that it was going to be Gunther and Rey Mysterio, which I don't know that is that much better either, given that you just had Gunther kill your biggest star, and retire him, tap him out, and so he would get Rey Mysterio at WrestleMania.
I guess maybe the thinking was that he would then kind of maybe end his career. Maybe that was going to be Rey's send off. I'm seeing. All right, so there's Jacob Fatu versus Drew McIntyre. Sami Zayn versus Trick Williams is apparently happening just because Sami Zayn decided to punch Trick Williams in the face backstage, and so they made a WrestleMania match out of that. AJ Lee versus Becky Lynch. I have what could best be described as negative level interest in that match.
Yeah, which is crazy. That this should be
below zero level interest.
But I mean, the promo work has been terrible.
Terrible. I said it again. I said it. Of course, I got killed online. I said this is absolutely awful. I mean, the stuff they were doing with the two of them, it's like bad high school theater. No one seems to care. I feel like, Becky Lynch's biggest weakness is her promos to begin with. And I feel like she's been gradually, steadily over the years, just losing more and more and more of her appeal. AJ Lee, I don't know if it's a personal thing. I've never quite understood what the big deal is about that. I didn't understand it 10 years ago, and I don't understand it now.
Yeah, I mean... but again, we talked about that a little bit earlier. The one little thing that they could have done to make that feel like a bigger deal is not have AJ Lee wrestle up until WrestleMania. It would be a lot bigger deal if this was her comeback match. But it's not even their first match for that title. They've been really undisciplined about holding back on stuff. I mean, they've been kind of giving everything away on TV, and then come WrestleMania, you don't have anything that feels special.
So I guess the big benefit, because like I was talking before about why are PLEs still even special, I guess you could say the one thing that makes them stand out is that you don't have the long promo segments on PLEs. It's basically just like, okay, we're going to get down to business and we're going to give you all the matches you want to see. But it really is a sad state of affairs when that's your big selling point. We're not going to talk for an hour and a half. So please watch the show. There'll be no talking, just action, please. And
30 minutes of commercials in between matches. Right. Yeah. That's the trade-off. Anyhow, I mean, again, and I do to some extent give them the benefit of the doubt that they've got 3 weeks to build. They could reverse course on some of this at least, and I don't doubt the buildings will be largely full, and there'll be a lot of anticipation, and they might deliver a really strong card. But even if they do, I don't think that negates a lot of the real issues that we have brought up here.
I still think before we kind of navigate out of this, I think it bears saying that I still have a lot of regard for Triple H as a wrestling mind.
I do too.
I think that's getting a little lost in the sauce right now with the business end of thing and the production end of things. But I still feel like at the end of the day, Triple H knows, what works with fans, what works with wrestling as the type of entertainment that has existed for many decades prior to this point in history. And, maybe we'll see, flashes of that here and there. I certainly hope so.
While we're on this topic, and since I got two traditionalists with me, what are your thoughts on this year's Hall of Fame class? You've got Stephanie McMahon, AJ Styles, Demolition, and then they seem to now have a different category for the old timers. And I think basically what it means is they're not going to get a speech. I think they're just going to acknowledge them in the crowd, the legacy recipients, and that's Sid and Bad News Brown.
Yeah.
Well, they're both dead, so they wouldn't be able to give a
But
speech anyway.
in past years, they would have relatives come up and accept on their behalf.
Right.
I don't think they're doing that because remember they did Kamala, I think, a year or two ago, and they just showed them sitting in the audience and they waved, and that was the extent.
Right. So the legacy thing, basically, from what I've been made to understand, especially from now going forward, the legacy is supposed to be strictly for people who've passed away. Okay. So, because they didn't want a fear, I guess they've always had is by giving away a lot of these things to people who are dead. First of all, it's a downer. Second of all, it's like the fans don't get to actually see them come up and make a speech. And so it was a way they decided to solve it. Like originally, the legacy thing was supposed to be pre-WWE people. It was supposed to be people who predated WWE. But I think now they're shifting towards just people that are deceased. That way they could focus the main Hall of Fame inductions on probably more recent stars that fans remember more.
Like Dennis Rodman.
Dennis Rodman.
Well, that's the celebrity wing. That's different. That's totally different. And believe me when I tell you, probably Dennis Rodman will probably be more over than anyone else going in, with the possible exception of AJ Styles. So
I think AJ's great. Yeah, I'm happy that he's.
Who do you think closes? Does AJ close or does Stephanie close? I assume Stephanie's closing.
Stephanie, yeah.
A good question. Yeah, I mean, like if it was Vince, which he would never want to do, but I can't picture Vince wanting to close, even as egocentric as he is. I don't think he would ever want to do that. But with Stephanie, who knows, especially with her husband being Hunter and the amount of back slapping that they've shown themselves capable of doing in past years, like that absolutely shameless Leah Maivia induction with The Rock from a couple of years ago that just had my jaw on the floor. Let's induct the worst territorial promoter of the 1980s and have The Rock in there with a gold belt that he gave to himself. I mean, it was embarrassing.
And again, you talk about some of the bad will. And last year, Triple H and Michelle McCool, the two big headliners, and this year, Stephanie.
This might be an unpopular opinion, but I'm just going to say it, and I think it's unfortunate that Undertaker, I think, killed the WWE Hall of Fame speech.
That was rough.
It will be forever the measuring stick, and I think that is unfortunate. And I'm glad that you say, Brian, that it was rough, because I remember at the time so many people were like, this is the best thing ever, and there's so much wisdom, and it
was horrible.
Yeah, it didn't
self-indulgent.
Yeah.
He turned it into like a one-man show, basically, which now he is doing a one-man show. Right. So maybe that was the rehearsal for it. I don't know where these guys got it into their head that the Hall of Fame induction has to be, I'm going to recap my entire life and career to you. I mean, you used to watch these things, and especially in the very beginning when they started, a guy would come up and talk for 5 minutes. Yeah. It's a tremendous honor. Thank you. He might tell a quick, funny story. As much as where this started, and it's one of the greatest speeches ever, but I think it set the standard where everybody thinks, I'm going to try to top this. It was Bobby Heenan. Bobby Heenan was the first one where he got up there and actually gave an induction speech that was a piece of entertainment. So I'm going to come up and do a thing and not just thank people. And ever since then, it's just been getting more and more and bigger. But Paul Heyman, also great. But I mean, like, what are we doing here? Like, we've turned it into performance art. And now, it becomes so, I don't know. There's no humility. There's nothing. It's horrible.
The best thing that could happen to AJ maybe is going on first, and he said he intends on keeping it relatively brief. So if he wants like an energetic crowd, it's not a bad idea to go on first and let Stephanie have everybody half asleep in the audience. So anyhow, Hogan, Andre, they're inducting, and I don't even know what it means to induct that. I mean, neither Hogan or Andre are alive, so. Is it just showing a video? Is somebody going to go up there and, do they have Nick Hogan? And Andre's daughter, who I think is around.
Yeah. Well, they basically replaced the Warrior Award with this. It seems like, I guess. Which I'm sorry. Yeah. I mean, I thought the Warrior Award was a great idea. They didn't always do it what it was supposed to be, but a few years they actually did. I always felt like that's the kind of an award you don't need to do on the TV broadcast. You know, maybe you do it before it's like what they do with the Oscars.
The technical awards.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, because I think it's very deserved and it's a very nice thing to do, but it's also not, you know, millions of people watching are not going to care that Rich Engling or you know, is getting an award, or Sue Aitchison, or people that I knew and loved. But you know, who cares if you're watching it on TV?
Yeah.
So I understand why they would do this moments thing, but you know, I mean, it's a little weird. I guess it's a way to maybe get some of these names on again, because it's like, all right, Austin's already in, Bret Hart's already in, Andre's in, Hogan's in. But if now we start inducting their matches, we could talk about them more. And,
but it is unfortunate, Brian, because those people behind the curtain, they do have great stories.
Yes.
You know, Al and I were talking about this a little bit. Even, you know, guys like us, we've got great stories. But people who've been in the actual business and doing all this, all making the sausage, if you will, they've got great stories. And you could bring that out. A good presenter or good, you know, production-minded group of people could bring that out and make it something really compelling. And instead, you know, we're just looking the other way.
Yeah. Anyhow, looking forward to it. I'm sure we'll get to talk to more WrestleMania in the coming weeks. Before we get out of here, I do want to bring up a couple of small things. I mentioned in my email to you guys a couple of headlines coming out of the Indies that I thought were interesting. And, you know, some months back, probably close to a year ago now, I had a lot to say about the incident out of California with Knox Pro and Rampage Jackson's kid, which I thought was a real black eye on the independent wrestling scene. Maybe unfairly so, because I'd like to think more, you know, most indies operate more professionally than that. And then we had a couple incidents in the last few weeks that are kind of being lumped in with that. And I don't know that that's necessarily fair. One was the incident in OVW, an Ohio Valley show, where a referee, as planned, got bumped, but got bumped a lot harder than he was supposed to, gets knocked out and essentially starts having some kind of seizure in the ring. And it's a while before anybody does much about it. I actually didn't. I mean, thankfully, the guy is okay. And certainly there are lessons to be learned from that. I think some of the criticism might have been a little bit too much. For one, it wasn't that long before, you know, the match was stopped. I mean, maybe 30 seconds to a minute.
You're being very kind, I think.
You think so? And the other thing, and I think Al Snow brought this up, and I had who's booker for them, and I also thought it was a really unique circumstance where the person who is typically the go-between, who is the one who is responsible for communicating that there's been an injury, is the one who is out. So now you're relying on wrestlers who expected to see the ref knocked out. That was part of the match. You know, maybe being more aware. And one of the wrestlers did seem to be somewhat aware early on. I thought that was so unique and strange. I don't know if I'm willing to give him a pass, but I don't know that I'm that critical of what happened there. Brian, you disagree?
Well, it comes off as an amateur hour kind of thing because, I mean, not everyone's WWE, but you know that WWE and even AEW, and they caught flack for that situation with John Moxley. I forget who it was, where somebody got a concussion and they went to the finish or something. But I mean, even AEW would not, I don't think, have something like this you wouldn't have seen, because there's always somebody whose job it is to be there if something like this happens. When this happened, it just sort of seemed like they had no contingency plan. Like they never in a million years envisioned that the referee might get hurt one day. Like this is not beyond the realm of thought. And so there should be somebody who's ready to jump in, whether he's at ringside or right near ringside, whose job is, because you know, if this happened in WWE and a referee went down like that, within seconds, there would be somebody in there because everybody's on headset. The thing that got me was that the wrestlers just kept working their match around the guy. And the worst of the worst was the guy that starts kicking him out of the way.
Yeah.
I mean, What are you doing? The guy's in the middle of a spasm. God knows what's wrong with him. And you're trying to roll him out of the way with your foot so you could hit all your spots. Like, it just seems like these guys are just robots who don't know how to spontaneously think in the moment. Like, I understand it's the referee, so that makes it a little more complicated. Like, I was there when the thing with Austin breaking his neck happened.
Oh, sure.
I was thinking about, yeah.
And the reason I say I was there, because anybody who watched it on pay-per-view, millions of people saw that. But if you were there, you could see how they were reacting. Now, Austin or Owen Hart immediately started playing to the crowd. Immediately, just so he wasn't breaking. He found a way to not break character, to not break kayfabe, but to do something that drew the attention away, that left Austin alone. And then you had Earl Hebner jumping in there and figuring out what was wrong with Austin, and you could they figured out how to do it. But in this situation, it would be like if Earl Hebner was the one who was down and out. It would be interesting to see how they would have reacted. I get that the referee it being down makes it more complicated, but this was just like, it just came across like we have no contingency plans in place for any of this stuff. We just wing it.
But you say it came off as amateur hour. It literally is amateur hour. I mean, this is not WWE. This is these are guys who and women and referees and wrestlers who are kind of getting their start in the business. So I do think that the standards are going to be a little bit different.
But OVW is OVW is
they're not your local, but it's also not Jim Cornette's OVW anymore.
But it's not your local Knights of Columbus, weekend warrior, the guy that pumps your gas is now having a wrestling match. This is more, I mean, they have some kind of a TV thing, don't they? Even if it's local, they have something. They had their own Netflix or whatever it was, reality series. I mean, they are, let's just put it this way. They are established and visible enough that they should be more legit than this.
Let's grab the most important point of this, though, whether it's WWE or OVW or Knights of Columbus, it's a teachable moment. Sure. I mean, it has brought something to bear now where you look at it and you have to accept that as, what if this happens? And what is the protocol? I can't remember because I watched that. It was not a planned bump for the ref, was it?
It was, I think he was supposed to get bumped.
Yeah,
because that case might be a little even harder to discern.
That's the thing. It's like the spot was that the ref is going to be knocked out, and he is knocked out. So I don't even know if you're going to be paying that much attention to what's going on. Clearly, at some point, it became apparent like this isn't what he's supposed to be doing. But also, I do think, and I'd have to go back and watch it, I don't think more than 30 seconds to a minute pass. So it wasn't that they went and they worked like a 10-minute match.
No, but you're right. It was about that time.
It wasn't exactly Undertaker being raised on the cage above, above Hell in a Cell while everybody scrambles around below. Yeah.
And I think to your point, Mike, it being a teachable moment, I think we heard the right things out of them, right? I mean, I think Al Snow came out and acknowledged that, this was, and I don't know exactly what he said, but I think there was some acknowledgement that there should be protocols in place, and going forward we'll address
it. But if they're not too big to take it as a lesson, WWE could learn from that. Maybe they won't pay attention. AEW could learn from that.
Sure.
Other indies could learn from it. So there is, I mean, if there's a silver lining in this, that's it, that here's a new scenario that maybe we haven't thought of. Let's plan accordingly.
Right. The other incident, and I thought this was a much worse look for kind of everybody involved, and I forget the name of the company, but Cruel, who was at one time MLW World Champion. I don't think he is anymore. Big, huge, masked guy is in a match, and I guess gets into it with a fan at some point, and then later on, was it like after the match at a merch table? There's an altercation, and the fan stabs a Cruel, and then everybody just piles on this guy, and this is what's available online. You have to dig around for it, but they just pummel this guy, and I very much get this is just all gross in every in every kind of way. And I mean, the guy's an idiot for stabbing a wrestler, obviously. But then I also do think like this, there's always this tradition of like, yeah, if you're going to take a shot at a wrestler, all bets are off, and now they could do what they want with you. And I get that to some extent. A wrestler gets in the ring, it's like, you're going to get your licks in and make it clear that this is not acceptable. This seemed to be a bit much, and especially caught on video. You talk about amateur, Brian. This was just ridiculous. It was a mugging. It was like 20 guys just profusely beating up on one guy. He's trying to get out of there. They kick him down the stairs, and they're just all laying into him. I don't know how many of those. I don't know this scene real well. It seems like it was some mix of wrestlers and fans that were beating up the guy. Again, not a lot of sympathy for the guy because the idiot stabbed a wrestler, but this was just gross all around.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there is that kind of unwritten rule, but sometimes you think, and I believe this is true, I think sometimes the wrestlers are waiting and hoping that somebody will try something so that they can do that. And not that they want somebody to get stabbed, but I don't think they particularly mind when a fan takes a swing, because I think they want the license to be able to go out there and beat up somebody they can't stand in the crowd, and they normally can't do that. But no, I mean, that's beyond the pale. Obviously, that's something for police, not for other wrestlers to deal with.
Right, and that's where, again, wrestling gets a bad look, because were that to happen at a Broadway show or whatever, or an NBA game, I do think like the idea would be, can we get some police, get some security here? And as you're touching on, it's like that seems to be like the most distant thought. It's like, oh yeah, now we get to pummel a fan.
Right. They don't want the police there. That would ruin the fun.
A wrestling event is not a vacuum. And the idea, I think it's something we've all shared as fans, the idea that anything goes in the ring, especially if the ref doesn't see it. There was an old stand-up comedian years ago. It's kind of a tasteless joke, but kind of a funny thought experiment. He was like, if anything's legal in the ring, why doesn't one wrestler bring a gun in and shoot the other guy? The same thing with Randy Orton when I think he was going to hit Stephanie with a sledgehammer in front of 10,000 fans. But that rule that you're talking about, that kind of unwritten rule or tradition that you're going to get a beat down. Times have changed too. I mean, I've heard Jim Cornette kind of wax philosophical about if this guy would have been this disrespectful in the past, they would have carried him out of the locker room in a body bag. It's like, is that what we want? Like, is that are you saying that like that's a good thing?
Right.
It reminds me too, though. It is part of it, just like the accidents we were just talking about. This is part of it too. And in my mind, this is what I think maybe my fourth reference to Memphis since we've been talking. But late 70s, early 80s, it was 1980. Sonny King was stabbed by a fan. I have some notes up here. He was stabbed numerous times, suffered a punctured lung, the knife nicked his heart. His comeback to Memphis, which I do remember, was a pretty big deal. They worked it into an angle, but I'm sure that he dealt with the after effects of that for a long time. And of course, it's Memphis. Of course, they worked it into an angle. I think Jerry Lawler brought him out, and he eventually turned on Lawler. But well before that too. If you ever watch, what was that Vice series, Dark Side of the Ring?
Oh, right, yeah.
Where they talk about the locker room justice for fans that step out of line and stuff. It's We don't want to admit it, but it is one of the darker traditions.
And I think there's kind of a place. I don't know. I mean, it's a tough thing to talk about. I remember talking about Hall of Fame where Bret Hart was tackled. Remember some years back here in Brooklyn, and of course, understandably, this guy was grabbed and moved. And I remember one of the FTR guys taking some punches on his way out. And frankly, watching it, I thought like, good for him. Like, this guy very much deserved it. Tackling a 60-year-old, Bret Hart in the ring at the ceremony. None of it is a good look, and I think it doesn't help, class up the reputation of wrestling.
it's one of those unintentional things. We always talk about how wrestling is this kind of a reflection of society, and this is unfortunately an example like that. It's why Bernie Getz, you guys are both New Yorkers, why Bernie Getz was a polarizing figure. It's why Charles Bronson had a film career. There are people kind of looking at this from different ways,
right?
But it's also important, and I guess Cruel is okay. I think he even tweeted out something like Cruel is all right or something like that. But somebody did get hurt. Somebody did get victimized. And I hate to use the same terms over and over again. Is that a teachable moment, or is that just part of the business? This one I'm not so sure about.
Yeah, it's just sort of like be better. This is just kind of gross all around. All right, guys, thank you so much. Mike, before we get out of here, there was something you wanted to promote, right?
I wanted to point people towards, there's a great Facebook page. It's called ICW Wrestling Kentucky Tribute Page. And I want to give a shout out. Unfortunately, one of the co-founders of the page, a guy named Eric Westland, who was just an expert, a super fan of ICW. I bought tapes from him back in the day before YouTube was a thing, so I could get my fix on old ICW. Eric passed away recently, unexpectedly. He had put together just a tremendous archive for ICW fans. They even put screen grabs on of just moments from the shows, and put old cards up and old posters. So I just want to encourage people to check that out and keep the memory of this promotion and the historic archival work, keep that alive. And to, I never knew Eric, but by all accounts, he was a great guy. So just honor his memory and that of ICW and the Poffo family too. And keep listening to Ace Frehley. Keep that memory alive. Also, I will never be so profoundly affected by the death of a famous person who I never met again in my life. But, keep Ace in your life. And,
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, another New Yorker. And I was very sad to hear about it. Glad to say that I saw Kiss with Ace at least twice. I saw him in '96, the reunion.
Yeah.
And then a few years later for Psycho Circus. And I think maybe one other time before they replaced him with Tommy.
I got to see him 3 times, including a show at Gund Arena on the first reunion tour, and saw him live, I think in '93 or '94 at a little heavy metal bar in Cincinnati pre-reunion. And he was great. I mean, he was great in the '90s, just terrific.
He still did local shows. I think he had something booked here on Long Island when he passed away. So
I saw him when I was in high school. There was a little rock club in Brooklyn called L'Amour, which was like this little hole in the wall. And for some reason, everyone would go there. It was wild. Like you would see everyone there. It was a dump. It was in the middle of this, industrial area. And one day I go, you wouldn't even know who was going to be there. We showed up, and it was Ace Frehley when he was just on his own. It was just Ace, whatever. I don't know if the band had a name or whatever, but it was just Ace Frehley. And there he was. And this had to be like about 90-ish, 91.
Yeah. He had Frehley's Comet for a little while. And then after the Comet kind of went away, he had that tour had a couple tours in the mid '90s where it was just him. And he did a tour with Peter Criss too, which was pretty cool. Yeah. I would have loved to have seen that, but yeah, keep it going, play it for your kids, play it for your neighbors, whether they want to hear it or not.
Mike, let me ask you a question, Mike, that I may regret asking if we end up like down a rabbit hole. Your thoughts on Kiss accepting the Kennedy Center honors?
I think we are living in a very weird time, and I don't know. I think I would have loved. I'm dodging the question, obviously. I would have loved to see them reunite at the Kennedy Center, or not the Kennedy Center, the Grammys. I'm sorry, not the Grammys. You're right. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I would have loved to have seen them reunite there. And I maybe sound like a typical Ace fan, but I think Paul and Gene have not. I think they've not done right by the longtime fans, and especially by Ace fans. I think some of Gene's comments right after the Kennedy Center honors were really unfortunate. Kind of know your audience, know the room. And,
he, did, he name dropped Gorilla Monsoon in a.
Did he really?
Yeah, he did. He was interviewed afterwards, and
Yeah.
he was saying about, I forget the context, but he was talking about how, so nobody should, because they mentioned like, how do you feel about this politically? And and he goes, who cares? That has nothing to do with this. Why should you care about what my politics are? I'm a musician. You should care about what music. Right. No, I'm not agreeing, but and he name dropped, I forget why he even said it. He mentioned Gorilla Monsoon, and Gene Simmons is an old New York guy from the 60s and 70s, so he probably grew up watching Gorilla Monsoon.
It's too bad he didn't name drop your book.
Yeah, no, right? Michael Cole did on a podcast recently.
Oh, did he? Fantastic.
Yeah, they brought it up, and he was like, I'm really looking forward to reading this book, or somebody brought it up to him because they were talking about Gorilla Monsoon. So
I told Al earlier at the beginning before you came on, I was on Spotify today scrolling through audiobooks, and here I see the Monsoon book, and it's read by you.
Yes, it is.
That's incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you. 14 and a half hours. All me.
How is the book doing, Brian?
Well, it was just about to drop out of the top 10 wrestling books when something happened. I don't even know what. Some type of weird clickbait viral quote from the book started going around. I had nothing to do with it. I think wrestlingnews.co, not My Wrestling News, but the other Wrestling News. They're the ones that put out all those graphics where they pick some like antagonizing quote that people could get outraged about, and they put it out there. So they put out something about how Vince and Gorilla, didn't get along. Of course, they oversimplified and lacking all nuance, but it went everywhere. And I think that's what wound up pushing it back up to number one, because
that's fantastic.
It shot back up to number one, and I have no idea.
So did it drop down to like 9 at some point? Or
it was actually at 10.
It went back to 1.
It went to 1.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
I have to say this for posterity. Your book about the Sheik was a masterpiece.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And I do recommend that, whenever I get with a wrestling fan who knows his or her stuff, that's one of the things that comes up.
But you only gave me 4 out of 5 suplexes.
Really?
Yes, you did.
Was it 4.5?
I've waited for 4 years, Mike, to find the opportunity to say.
I walked right into it.
Yeah, you did.
Everybody be like, he's just giving him 5 out of 5 because they know each other.
I figured that's what it was. You didn't want to appear to have any kind of favoritism. I understand.
There you go.
God,
anyway,
I'm gonna go look that up now. I'm gonna think about that the rest of the night.
You hadn't read it yet. That's what happened.
I hope you had if you wrote the review.
I absolutely did.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, both of you. Appreciate it, Mike. Thanks for coming on. We won't wait long to get you back on. Brian, thanks for jumping in. I expect before Mania we'll get back together, do a real preview, and then after WrestleMania debrief. Thanks, everybody. Head on over, PWI-online, pick up the latest issue, subscribe, and we'll be back soon.